this was inspired by a couple of recent videos by Professor Sky. Professor Sky's Record Review is one of my favorite YouTube channels. His approach to reviewing music is very nuanced, and he is obsessed with dualism. He's obsessed with this idea that two things can be true at once. That an artist can be a bad person and also make great music is one that comes up a lot in his videos. And while I agree with that fact, I also don't think it's interesting. I don't think it's an interesting fact that a bad person can make good music, because I don't think good music is inherently interesting. So let's get into those truisms I mentioned. First, music is always happening. Music is always being made. I'm not saying the same person is always making music, but people who make music do tend to make a lot of it. Whether they release a lot of it to the public or not, they tend to always be making music. And there's hundreds of thousands, if not literally hundreds of millions of musicians worldwide. So on any given day, there is an impossible amount of music being made. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that almost all of that music is good to someone. Whether it's only good to the person making it, or it's good to the people in the room, or it's good to a broader audience, I think that most of the music being made is good to someone. Now, when we talk about good, when we're talking about like a review of something, there's a lot of different parameters we can describe something as good with, right? We can say that someone is a good writer, has good lyrics. We can say they've got good structure, good technical performance skills, good production. But all of those things are easy to disagree with. What's good for one person will never be good for everyone. It will always be good for certain people. And so when we just say that something is good, it's really not an interesting paradigm to slot it into, because everything is good. Everything's good for somebody, and everything sucks for somebody. And if you say this has good production and then I go and listen to it and I don't think the production is good, it's not that either one of us is right or wrong. It's just that we have a different idea of what good production is. Now, I have a few times in my life gone down the rabbit hole of trying to listen to everything, by which I mean as much music as humanly possible every day. I haven't had a normal job in, uh, we'll say, my life. And the times that I've decided I was going to like rabbit hole myself into music, I did things like go to the front page of Bandcamp every day and sample every new release that comes out, and then go over to Pitchfork and sample every album that they reviewed that day, and then go over, and watch every Anthony Fantano video and listen to all the music he recommends, including in the Why You Know reviews and all that stuff. And what I found is that I don't like very much. I don't like very much new music that comes out, because I have pretty particular tastes. And if none of that stuff reaches my taste, I'm not going to enjoy it. But there are so many tastes being represented in music. There are sounds that I might hear and just it's unfamiliar in an unpleasing way, or it's familiar in an unpleasing way. There are so many albums that would get good reviews and I just don't get anything out of it. And albums that would get poor reviews and I would love them. Plenty of times Pitchfork has given very paltry scores to albums that I really loved. The first one that comes to mind is Clipping's second album, which I think is phenomenal, and they gave it like a 5.1 out of 10. Fantano gave that one an 8, but you know what? He also loves a lot of music that I get nothing out of. I've never been able to enjoy Godspeed You Black Emperor. I've never been able to enjoy Daughters that much. Like a lot of the music he really, really loves doesn't do very much for me. But meanwhile, some of the albums he gave a 6 out of 10. Acid Rap by Chance the Rapper was like my favorite album for a very long time, and he gave that a 6. So whoever says a thing is good or bad, it's relatively irrelevant to the listener. It's like you're going to decide if it's good or bad for you. All of those albums are good. And of course I can recognize what is good about Daughters, what is good about Godspeed You Black Emperor. But I can also recognize what is good about some, unheard of indie garage band that even if I don't like them, I appreciate why other people do. Again, I think most music is good. Most of it has obvious qualities that are likable. It's just that as an audience member, you have to decide, does the goodness of this offset what I don't like about it? And 99 times out of 100, it's not going to. 99 times out of 100, it's going to bother you more than it's going to delight you if you actually try to listen to that much music. But most of us have some kind of filtration system in place. A lot of people don't listen to anything independent. They don't go and look for music. They wait for music to come to them. And so the industry in and of itself is kind of like a filter, right? There's only certain bands that get signed. There's only certain bands that get promoted even after they've been signed. And usually this means that the label is making a bet that this band will be considered good by more people than not. That a lot of the people they're going to push it to will think it's good, or at least enough of them will think it's good that it'll become a profit venture for them to promote this band. Does that mean that it's good? No. Does that mean that it's bad? No. It just means that they think more people will find this good than not, enough so that they can make a career out of selling this band to you. And so a lot of people kind of put a level of faith in that the industry is selecting good stuff to send to them. But you have to have pretty similar tastes to some category of, not even a majority, but like you have to have a taste that is recognizable within the industry for it to push that stuff to you. Plenty of my favorite music didn't come from the industry, doesn't have a big audience, only really appeals to a few, dozen or a few hundred people, and probably won't ever get spread to a level where, even a relatively minor label band will get to. And that doesn't make the music any worse. It just means it's less worth gambling on. It's less worth putting money behind in the eyes of those companies. A lot of people will rely on some kind of individual filter like Anthony Fantano, where he's investigating more music than most people and that he's pretty decent at sorting between what is going to be heard and liked by a lot of people and what's not. And even when he talks about like a small album that's not really being super promoted by the industry, he has a sense of more people would like this than the industry think. And so even if that video doesn't do crazy numbers and that band doesn't become gigantic, at the very least, there's a level of respect people have that Fantano's not promoting something because like his friend made it. He's promoting it because he sincerely thought it was good, and he sincerely thinks his audience will also think it's good. And so in that way, I have found lots of great music through Fantano, even if he only gives it maybe a 6 to an 8, if he thinks that it's worth promoting, then oftentimes it is worth promoting to people like me who do like some of the music that he likes. I'm a big Death Grips fan, a big Kendrick Lamar fan. That's how I got into him. So there's a level of his sorting algorithm helping me with my sorting algorithm, in that even if I only like half the bands that he likes, at least that's a lot of bands. Now, before this whole internet age, aside from record labels, the sorting algorithms we relied on was just where do you live? Who do you know? Like you used to get into bands because your friends are into them or because they're playing live in your town. And a lot of stuff starts at that level. It starts at the level of people I know come together over this. And then that gets noticed and it gets promoted to a bigger crowd, but sometimes a band's not really looking for that even. A lot of bands want to be local because they want to know their audience. They want to have a more intimate relationship in that way. And if that is survivable, if they are capable of, just performing within a certain area and not having to tour the whole country or the whole world, they might just settle for that. So a band's size obviously has little to do with its quality, but also a band's performance quality has little to do with its quality in your eyes. It's going to come down to what do you like about them? Do you like that they're local? Do you like that your friends listen to them? Do you like that they remind you of, another band that you liked in the past? Do you like that they don't remind you of another band you liked in the past? Do you just like the way the guitar sounds or the singer's voice sounds? Do you like the bass lines? Do you like, there's something about it that draws you to it, and it's not that it's good. It's all good. If you just liked everything good, you'd like too much music. You'd like more music than you know what to do with. But if you like it because of personal reasons, that's interesting. So the reason I'm saying all of this is that Professor Sky uh, defended in certain ways the new Drake album Iceman and also the new JPEGMafia album Experimental Rap, and he compared them and he brought up a lot of problems with both. Like, he talked mostly about problematic content in these albums, but while also acknowledging that there's good about them, that there is things to be praised about the performances, about the music quality. And I just, I felt like all that's obvious. Like, yeah, of course it's good. It's being backed by like these major, like, it would never have entered your purview if it wasn't good. You wouldn't even know about it if it wasn't good. The fact that it's good is not interesting. The fact that it's bad is interesting. The fact that it's hateable even though it's good is interesting. With Drake, it's this perplexing case of like, you have access to everything. Theoretically, your music could be as good as you possibly want it to be. I ended up listening to Thriller and reviewing that just last night for the Wham's show, and comparing Thriller against Iceman is a fascinating duality. Of course, Iceman, he's wearing Michael Jackson's glove on the cover, which is what inspired me to do that. And in that case, Michael Jackson is working with Quincy Jones as the producer, and Quincy Jones is just one of the greatest musicians of all time. And so Michael Jackson is grabbing, like, he's saying, I'm already this amazing talent. Let me grab an even greater talent and have that, because I'm famous enough to do that. I have the money to do that. I have the budget that I can work with another, like, titan. He's got Paul McCartney on this album from the Beatles, like, before himself, the biggest band. And then you've got, like, when they go around to make the guitar parts on the album, they go and grab Eddie Van Halen because, well, that's the best guitarist that we know of. So it's like, he had, and this is before Michael Jackson was even nearly as famous as he became. Like, Thriller is what really made him next level famous. So even though he was not the biggest celebrity of all time yet, he put all of his resources and all of his power towards making the highest quality music he could and getting that to the most people possible. And even then, I don't think that the fact that the album is good is what makes it interesting. It's the spirit of it. It's what the album does and has to say. Because one of the, I guess you could call it, almost controversial aspects of this album, maybe not so much in today's world where it's just seen as this classic, but at the time, Michael wanted it to be something he could dance to. And it was to a level where it was creating friction between him and Quincy Jones, where he's so concerned about the dancing aspect that he's not even like fully present working on some of the music, and a lot of it has to be re-recorded. They made 90 songs for this album, and it's only 9 songs long. Like, there was so much that went into trying to get it into this perfect crystallization of its idea. But the core of it is like, Michael wants to make music he can dance to. Drake, the core of his album is, I have to break my contract with UMG. I have to get out of my contract with UMG. So I'm going to make 3 albums full of just like the bottom line expectation of what Drake is capable of. He doesn't bring in an all-star list of producers. He doesn't bring in an all-star list of features. He's got a couple guys do a little bit, but it's clear that they did not spend months in the studio perfecting the sound the way that Michael Jackson did on Thriller. They just went in and winged it and did whatever. And so Yes, there's good things about it that just come from the nature of talented people did work on it, but none of them gave their best. You don't feel them through the music. You don't feel the intent other than, how do I get out of this UMG contract? And so whatever's good about it really just becomes totally evaporated in the heat of how bad it is as an overall package. Whereas with the Thriller album, I don't think it's perfect. I think there's things about it that I personally don't like. There are things that other people probably, are bothered by, little ticks and things in there, like moments you think a song goes on too long or an intro lasts too long or whatever. Like, all of that evaporates in the light of how amazing the good of the album is, how much heart and soul there is in this release. Now, this isn't me saying that like it is not at all worthwhile to acknowledge the goodness of the Drake album or the JPEGMafia album, but it is to say that presenting that as if it's like noteworthy is a little weird to me, because again, the bad part is the noteworthy part. JPEGMafia has always made good music. Why is this one so much worse? Why does this one hurt my feelings? Why does this one make me feel like, oh no, this guy who I respected, I don't know if I can keep respecting him at this point? That's the interesting lane of discussion on that album. It's not a surprise that JPEGMafia can make great beats. It's a surprise that that's not enough to save him, like it has been in the past. And particularly in the case of JPEGMafia, what this comes down to is the presentation of his personality. The biggest reason that people are dividing from him, his fan base is kind of falling apart, is that the personality of the music has changed. And you can see it in his presentation of himself outside of the music. And if you're somebody who thinks you can separate art from the artist, I really just don't believe you. I think you either aren't keeping track or you're deliberately ignoring it because you don't want to have to think about it. But there is no real separation of the art from the artist because these two things are indivisible. The way the artist is evident in the music. In the case of JPEGMafia, when he first started off, his thing was presenting internet chaos as a human being, basically. He was referencing all kinds of hyper online ideas and basically portraying himself as this leftist, like, criminal, like, troll. Like, the idea was that he was playing around with people's expectations and with the idea of what you're allowed to say, and with, basically taking hip hop into a very internet place as somebody who had grown up on the internet and who had seen a lot of the same stuff that the rest of us internet people had seen. And so his music was very relatable if you were an internet edgelord, but particularly an internet edgelord who doesn't like the whole alt-right white supremacist movement that was going on, that he was calling out all the time in his lyrics. And it's not that he didn't have barbs for the left or for, liberals and stuff. He made fun of them too. But his perspective was, I am an empire unto myself, and I believe in my sense of righteousness, and I'm out to attack all of these ideas and institutions and individuals that are trying to encroach on my personal sense of righteousness. And part of his presentation, you look at All My Heroes Are Cornballs, and on that album, he's wearing a dress. He's presenting these gender fluid ideas where he's softly singing famous R&B songs by women, and his music has this shyness, this introspection, this self-loathing, this aspect of self-criticism that has all kind of slowly twisted over time, where as he has pursued greater fame and more money and become more of a sort of a cartoon character version of himself, he's no longer this guy who's in the streets of Baltimore specifically because Baltimore is the hardest place, the place that fights its government the most. That's why he went there. And it used to be that he was hanging out with these underground artists in Baltimore and, being this grungy kind of street dude with an internet slant. Now he's a touring artist. You know, he's always on the move. He's always in a Van Helsing outfit. He's always with a different girl. He's not that guy. He's not Mr. Baltimore. He's not Mr. Internet leftist. He's Mr. Big Shot, you know, rock star guy. And that comes through in the music. The way he presents himself in his music is no longer shy. It is no longer self-critical. It is no longer, and not in the same way. It's no longer about being the type of person he used to be, because he's not that person anymore. He's a new guy. And this new guy doesn't have the feminine side. In fact, he seems weirdly misogynistic. This new guy doesn't talk about being a leftist and anti, alt-right. He's hanging out with Ye, who many people see as a mouthpiece of alt-right ideas. He's suddenly representing all these things in the music that fly in the face of what he used to do. One of his best songs, Baby I'm Bleeding, he said he promised he would never go blonde like Kanye. And now he's gone blonde like Kanye. So when that happens, you can't help but look at him as, oh, I can't trust you anymore. I don't believe in you anymore. I used to think you were this person, and now I see you're not who I thought you were. And again, it comes through in the music. It's not just that you see him say this stuff in interviews or you see him act this way on Twitter. It's that he then references all that, in the songs. And it's just hateable. It's easy to hear his music now and just go, I don't want to have to be a fan of this guy. And it doesn't matter how much the beat knocks if the soul of it isn't hitting with you. Of course the music is good, but the personality of the music sucks. Plenty of people who are less capable of making amazing beats are making better music because you can enjoy it. You could just listen to it, and even if the person barely knows how to play their instrument, barely knows how to sing, they're talking about something real that's relatable and that makes you go, damn, I really like that, I think about Shitty Kickflips, because Shitty Kickflips is a relatively niche, I guess I'd call her a cult favorite internet creator. And she's a trans woman who was the moderator of JPEGMafia's Discord in her teens. So she was a big JPEG fan, but then over the last few years completely fell out of favor with him. Realized oh, this guy is not who I thought he was. He doesn't represent the things I thought he represented. I can't listen to him anymore. I can't enjoy him anymore. He seems like a dumb douchebag now. And, Shitty Kickflips is also a musician. She plays guitar and sings. She's in a band called Snake World, and she also makes her own releases. And her music is, on a technical level, in the exact opposite lane of JPEGMafia's. It is not trying to sound polished or new necessarily. It's straightforward punk rock with, simple chord progressions and kind of just shouted lyrics. But her lyrics are super relatable. The stuff she talks about is interesting. It hits with her audience. And for me, as somebody who I do care about music sounding good, I like when music sounds good, but I also don't think that sounding good means sounding polished or sounding technically brilliant. Sounding good means capturing the soul of what you're doing well. And, the soul of Shitty Kickflips music is beautiful. The soul of JPEGMafia's music now is ugly. And not in a good way, it's evil is how the feeling I get from it is this doesn't feel like something I should want to hear. I don't want to hear a guy talk about how he's stealing everyone's girl. I don't want to hear a guy talk about how much money he's making. I don't want to hear him shitting on all his ops. I don't care about your ops. I don't know your ops. Why do I care that you are shitting on your ops? To bring this back around and put some distance from JPEGMafia, I want to talk about the first time that a band showed their personality to me in a way that ruined their music for me. And that band is Dream Theater. If you don't know Dream Theater, they're very famous in the world of prog metal band. They are from, I think, the UK, and they've been around since the late 80s. And they write incredibly technical, complicated songs with ridiculous structures and the most diverse time signatures you'll ever hear in music. At the same time, their songs all kind of sound exactly the same, despite how technically different each one is. They all somehow end up just sounding like the same thing. And I got into them through an album called Train of Thought, which is like their heaviest album from back in 2002 or whatever, when I was like really getting into prog metal. And I'll stand by, that album has a couple of pretty good songs on it. But I went back from that and I checked out their album Awake from, I think, the early 90s. And I remember listening to it in the car with my dad one time. And he goes, "This just sounds like Dragon Force to me," which is another band I was listening to back then. And my instinct was to be like, that is such an ignorant thing to say, right? Like, Dragon Force is sort of infamous for just making the most straightforward, like it's just a blast beat the entire song. The guitars are just playing noodly, whatever. And yes, the guitarists are incredibly technically proficient, but what they're playing is largely nonsense. But then I really listened to the Dream Theater album and I was like, yeah, this is the exact same thing. It's just a flex. It is just about the technical skill. It has nothing to do with making a song that is interesting or has like a particular message or has any kind of like nuance to it. It's just like, how much technicality can we put into a song? And that's not what ruined them for me. What ruined them for me was reading this Revolver magazine one time where they had like a one-page article on them that was like a pseudo interview. And one of the band members literally said, "We get compared all the time to bands like Tool, the Mars Volta, and Mastodon. But we're better than all of them, and they're all more famous than us, which I guess means that people just don't have good taste." It was almost those exact words. Granted, I'm remembering this from like 20 years ago, but I assure you, those are the three bands they said they were better than explicitly. Now, at the time, I was a fan of Dream Theater, but I was a way bigger fan of Tool and the Mars Volta and Mastodon. So I read this and I was just like, what the fuck? First of all, how can you believe that? Like, you're not as good as any of those bands. And second of all, why would you attack three bands in your category as a way to try to big yourself up when you're talking to the fans of those bands? Like, if you're in the same category as them, that means that your listeners like those bands. Insulting those bands is not going to get you to be more loved. Like, did they think I was going to read that and go, you know what, you're right. Why do I listen to Mastodon? Why do I listen to Tool? I should just be listening to Dream Theater more. No, there's space in my day for all of those bands. But I read that and I just thought, wow, these guys really do believe that playing in weirder time signatures makes them a better band. It's not just something they're doing because they naturally think it sounds cool. They're like, no, this is what good music is. Good music constantly flexes the technical skill of the performer. Now, Tool and the Mars Volta and Mastodon are all very fucking technical bands, but none of them is that the point of the band. Tool does play in weird time signatures, but all of their songs are about something very specific. All of their songs, the music captures what's being said in the lyrics perfectly. All of their songs have a similar theme of like dissociation and trying to come back from trauma, this attempt to like feel human when the world is making you feel less than human. That's the theme of Tool's music. The Mars Volta, similarly about coping with trauma, specifically death of friends and loved ones. and suicidal thoughts and feeling like the world is just a weird place you don't belong in. Like that's what the Mars Volta's music is about. And their songs are everything. You know, their songs do so much and have so many ideas, but those ideas aren't like what's the most technically interesting thing we could do. It's like, how do we combine all these disparate influences we have into something that makes sense? How do we create a cinematic story through sound? You know, it was never about showing off how good they are at their instruments. That's in there. You know, they have to be really good at their instruments to make the music they're making, but it is not about showing off how good they are at it. You listen to Mastodon, like they're just trying to make the most badass sounding song they can. Sometimes that means playing some really technical shit, you know? Sometimes it means being a little bit more straightforward, but the point of Mastodon was always just to blast your face off. That's all they were trying to do. Blast your fucking face off with some muddy Atlanta sound, you know? All of those are interesting methodologies and approaches. Dream Theater songs would be like, some of them have a story, some of them have a point. I should say all of them have a story, but whether or not that story is actually captured musically is another debate. You know, a lot of the time they literally would do like the rip from the headlines thing of like, this song is an interpretation of a real event that happened, and like they're kind of just stating the story rather than performing it. You know, it feels like they came up with a bunch of crazy riffs and then they put the story on top of that. You know, it just, this isn't even really meant to be like a huge knock against the songwriting of Dream Theater. I don't even think they're a terrible band, but the personality of the music, once you know that these guys think they are better than other bands because they're so technically skilled, and then you listen to the music that feels like it's mostly trying to flex their technical skill, it's unavoidable to put those two things together. I cannot listen to them do the wankery and not think about how they're literally standing on stage thinking, "Oh, I'm so fucking good at guitar," you know, like. So I don't think you can really truly separate the personality of the band from the music, because the music is how they express their personality. That is what the music is. JPEGMafia is expressing who he is, who he feels he is through his music. And that person has evolved in a way that people like me who were fans of him in 2018, we're just not seeing that guy in his current music. And the new guy we're seeing, we don't like. You know, the same with Ye. Like, yeah, he's always been good at making music, but the personality of the music is not what it was at the start of his career, you know? And I think it can be really difficult to hang on to something like that, right? People change and evolve, and inevitably their music's going to change and evolve with them. Coheed and Cambria is one of my favorite bands. Totally different personality from the first half of their career and the second half. I don't hate their current personality. It doesn't do as much for me. You know, not as many songs hit with me as the songs I grew up with, but it's a good personality, and I can recognize that. And that's still not enough to make me love the music necessarily. You know, sometimes I think it's just kind of corny, or it just doesn't hit with me the way I, you know, on a musical level. But like, it's not even so much that, oh, I don't like their personality now. It's that there's just a lot of other music I can listen to, and the personality is good. You know, I love that new IDK album to death because the personality that it shows is really fun. And I don't even think it's 100% agreeable to me. It's not like he doesn't say anything that makes me kind of cringe or groan on that album. And it's possible that I will eventually not want to hear it anymore because maybe it will stop resonating with me, you know? Uh, I'm worried about Doechii, right? Because I loved Alligator Bites Never Heal, but I see the way that her career has exploded into this trajectory where I don't know if it's going to be relatable to me when she makes more music. I don't know if I'm still going to be able to connect with her when the experiences she's had are in such a different world from the one that I'm a part of or I'm interested in. So it's not even weird to think that artists will, you know, change personality and that you will fall out with it. I just find it fascinating, again, when we feel the need to point out that the music is good. It's just like, yeah, of course it's good, but is it for me? You know, is it likable? Professor Sky, are you going to continue listening to Iceman and JPEG Mafia? And if so, is that just because it's good? Is it because you are interested in listening to a bad personality? Because that can be part of it too, right? Like, you don't have to want to like the personality of the music to find it engaging to listen to. I'm a big fan of songs that I call pathetic gloating villain songs, where it's usually done very tongue in cheek, but it's somebody presenting an awful person and just having them say awful things, but with this undercurrent of like, yeah, this is what a terrible person is like. I'm a fan of that kind of song. So if you're listening to it thinking, wow, Drake, you're such a piece of shit, then yeah, I can understand how that's entertaining. But like, I don't I don't think it's as healthy to present it like, oh well, Drake's a piece of shit, but also he's a good musician, as it would be to say like, I love that Drake's a piece of shit. You know, I love that JPEG Mafia shows me this bad type of a person that is entertaining to listen to, if that's how you feel about it. I don't think that, you know, a musician should always be the avatar of your own personality. I don't think you should be looking to them to reflect your reality entirely necessarily. It's more about the entertainment factor, you know. Maybe you just like to see a good villain. That's a better defense of Ye than saying his music is good. Of course his music is good. Do you like that he's a villain? I liked My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy because Ye was a villain on it. Everyone was a villain on it. It was a great villain performance. I don't think his newer albums are a great villain performance. I think they're boring for the most part. But, you know, I like the archness of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That's why Fantano doesn't like that album. He doesn't like the arch villain part of it. He finds it gross and hard to listen to. And I totally understand that. But for me, it is pathetic gloating villain the album, you know, and that's what's fun about it. So yeah, basically what I'm saying is the personality is what matters. It's not that you have to like the personality, it's just that you have to be entertained by the personality. And to say that it's good music means very little in the face of that. All right, I'm repeating myself now. I've been Nova. Thanks for watching. Check out all of the different channels from all of my different personalities that are all in the link tree below. Uh, Thank you if you watched this. Shout out Professor Sky. And I'll see you next time. Music forever.